A father stands outside a college graduation, his daughter is walking across that stage in a cap and gown, one of the biggest moments of her life, and he is not in the crowd. He was never invited. When she takes her diploma, the name printed on it isn't his. This is Brad Pitt. One of the most famous faces on the planet. A man who has stood on Oscar stages, who has been called the most photographed man in Hollywood for 30 years. And right now, at 62 years old, he is living through something that money, fame, and charm cannot fix. 5 of his 6 children have walked away from his last name. Not quietly. Not privately. In court papers, on movie credits, on a Broadway playbill. One by one, his own kids erased Pitt from how the world knows them. For a man whose name built an empire, this isn't just painful. It's personal, in a way the public almost never gets to see. So what really happened inside that family? Why would 4? Then 5 of his own children choose to disappear his name from their lives? Was it really about anger, or was there something deeper, something Brad Pitt has never fully explained? He hasn't given the tell-all interview. He hasn't gone on camera and broken down. He has stayed almost completely silent. But silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. Behind closed doors, insiders say, this is one of the most devastating chapters of his life, and it didn't happen overnight. It built, slowly, for years. This is the story of how it got here. Brad Pitt didn't just become famous. He became the definition of Hollywood charm. From Thelma and Louise to Say 7 and from Fight Club to Ocean's 11, he built the kind of career most actors only dream about. He won an Oscar. He became a producing powerhouse behind films like 12 Years a Slave and Moonlight. He was the face every magazine wanted on its cover. But it wasn't just the career. It was the image. For years, Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie were treated like Hollywood royalty. 2 of the biggest stars alive, together, raising 6 children, doing humanitarian work across the globe. The tabloids called them Brangelina. From the outside, it looked like the closest thing Hollywood had to a real-life fairy tale. They adopted children from different countries. They built a home in the south of France, a sprawling estate called Chateau Miraval, where they grew grapes and made wine and pictured their family growing old together. For a long stretch, it looked like Brad Pitt had everything: the career, the love story, the family, the legacy. And then, in 2016, it all came apart. Angelina Jolie filed for divorce. And the reason that surfaced shocked people. She said that during a private flight back from Europe, something happened between Pitt and the children that left her shaken enough to walk away from the marriage completely. Child welfare officials, and the FBI, opened investigations into what occurred on that plane. That alone would have dominated headlines for a year. But it was only the beginning. The FBI eventually closed its investigation without recommending charges. No criminal case was ever filed. Pitt has maintained that he owns what he is responsible for, while denying the parts of the allegations he says simply aren't true. But here's what makes this story different from a normal celebrity divorce. It didn't end in 2016. It didn't end when the divorce was finally finalized, years later, in 2024. The custody questions, the legal fights, the unresolved tension between Pitt and his children, kept dragging on, year after year, long after most divorces fade from the headlines. And slowly, the public perception of Brad Pitt began to shift. The leading man. The Hollywood heartthrob. The guy every magazine wanted to interview. Professionally, he was still all of that. His movie, F1, became one of the biggest hits of his career. But personally, something was clearly breaking, piece by piece, in front of everyone. People who once admired the picture-perfect family started asking a different question. What was actually happening behind that famous smile? The first real sign that something was deeply wrong came from his own son. In 2020, on Father's Day, Pax Tien Jolie Pitt, one of Brad Pitt's adopted sons, posted something online that stunned people. He didn't hold back. He accused his father of having no empathy toward his younger children, and said they were afraid of him. For a public used to seeing Brad Pitt as the charming, easygoing movie star, this was jarring. A teenager, his own son, was publicly describing fear in his father's presence. Pitt didn't respond. He let it sit there, unanswered, while fans and media tried to piece together what was really happening behind that family's closed doors. And that's when things started to spiral. Around the same time, the legal fight over the French winery, Chateau Miraval, was heating up. Pitt wanted to buy Jolie's share of the property they had built together. Instead, she sold her stake to someone else entirely, a move Pitt called underhanded, accusing her of doing it without his consent. Jolie's side pushed back hard, claiming Pitt had tried to attach conditions to the deal that would have silenced her on sensitive matters involving him. The place that once symbolized their love story had turned into a courtroom battlefield. And underneath all of it, the custody situation with the children remained unresolved. Pitt was the one fighting to stay connected. The children, according to multiple reports, were the ones pulling away. People close to the family started suggesting something most fans didn't want to believe. That Brad Pitt's relationship with several of his kids might never fully heal. But even that wasn't the most painful part of what was coming. In 2024, Shiloh, one of his daughters, turned 18. On her birthday, she filed legal paperwork to drop Pitt from her name entirely. Not socially. Not casually. Legally, permanently, the moment she was old enough to do it herself. That same year, Vivian, one of his youngest daughters, appeared in the playbill for a Broadway show, credited simply as Vivian Jolie. No Pitt. Just her mother's name. 2 of his children. The same year. The same unmistakable statement. Then Zahara joined them. At her college graduation, a moment most parents wait a lifetime for, she walked the stage without using her father's last name. And Pitt wasn't there. He hadn't reached out beforehand. He didn't try to attend. No paparazzi catching him in the crowd. No photo of a proud father. Just an absence that spoke louder than any headline could. But what happened next changed everything. In 2026, Maddox, his eldest son, filed to legally drop the Pitt name as well. He had been working as an assistant director on one of his mother's films, and where he was once credited as Maddox Jolie Pitt, he now appeared simply as Maddox Jolie. 4 of his 6 children. Then a 5th. Each one, at a different age, in a different way, quietly stepping away from the name that once defined their entire childhood. Insiders said Pitt was devastated. One source close to him claimed his biggest fear was becoming permanently disconnected from his own kids. Another said he had sat through years of family therapy, trying to repair what had broken on that plane back in 2016. But therapy wasn't enough. Time wasn't enough. And the question everyone started asking was simple: how does a father lose almost his entire family's trust, one child at a time, in full public view? The breaking point wasn't one single moment. It was years, finally becoming impossible to ignore. By 2026, the picture was almost complete. 5 of his 6 children had distanced themselves from his name in some form. Reports described Pitt as remaining estranged from most of his children, despite reported attempts to reconnect. Friends said he wanted to reach a quiet truce with Jolie, hoping to finally close a chapter that had dragged on for nearly a decade. And here's where it gets even harder to watch. On screen, he was thriving. F1 became one of the biggest box office hits of his career. Audiences still showed up. Critics still respected him. At 62, professionally, Brad Pitt was more bankable than he'd been in years. But privately, the family he had spent decades building in front of the cameras was unraveling behind them. No one expected this from someone like him. And then the winery battle, the one piece of unfinished business that had outlasted the divorce itself, escalated even further. Pitt accused Jolie of deliberately delaying their long-awaited trial, claiming key witnesses were dying or growing too sick to testify, in a case that had already dragged on for years. Jolie's side fired back, saying there was no real urgency, accusing Pitt's team of twisting the situation. The place where Brad Pitt once imagined raising his children had become the very battlefield tearing his family further apart. For someone who built an entire image around effortless cool, here was Brad Pitt, in his 60s, fighting in court over wine, fighting for his children's last names, fighting for relationships that might never come back. So where does that leave him now? According to people close to him, Brad Pitt has started leaning into the parts of his life that still feel stable. His relationship with girlfriend Ines de Ramon, who he's been dating since late 2022, is described by friends as calm, grounded, unusually low-key for someone at his level of fame. One insider said she brought him a sense of peace after what they called an emotional few years. They've been seen together in Paris, at the French Open, traveling through Provence. Staying mostly out of the spotlight, a sharp contrast to the chaos of his past relationship. For a man who spent a decade in headlines about lawsuits and estrangement, this quieter chapter feels intentional. But the truth behind this is far more complicated than a new relationship can fix. No career win, no quiet vineyard in France, changes the fact that 5 of his 6 children have chosen, in their own ways, at their own pace, to step back from carrying his name. This isn't tabloid speculation. It's filed in courtrooms. Printed on playbills. Listed in film credits. Pitt has reportedly told people close to him that he owns what he's responsible for, while insisting he won't claim responsibility for things he says he didn't do. A careful, guarded kind of statement, the kind people make when the full truth may never come out at all. What's clear is this. The most photographed man in Hollywood, a man who turned his own name into one of the most recognizable brands on the planet, is now watching that very name disappear from the people who once carried it without question. And the question nobody can answer yet is the hardest one of all. Is there still a path back to his children, or has too much already happened? Today, at 62, Brad Pitt is still one of the most successful actors alive. His films still draw crowds. His career shows no sign of slowing down. But the family he spent decades building in public, has quietly, painfully come apart, one name change at a time. Friends say he hopes for reconciliation. Reports suggest he's finally seeking peace with Angelina Jolie after years of legal battles. Whether his children ever come back to him the way he hopes, remains genuinely uncertain. It's a reminder that fame can buy almost everything, except the one thing Brad Pitt seems to want most right now. His family back. So what do you think really happened inside that family? Do you think Brad Pitt deserves a chance to rebuild those relationships, or do you think some bridges can't be repaired? Tell us in the comments, we want to hear both sides. And if this story pulled you in, subscribe, because we bring you the real story behind Hollywood's biggest names, every single week.